Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mainstream Indie Music channel. We talk about all things indie music. You probably already can hear the song playing by the time you saw this video and you clicked on this video and started to hear the recording. That sweet falsetto, that sweet delayed guitar riff playing over, and then the kick drum that starts in the background. You can hear it clear as day. I know I can hear it. Sweet Disposition. I've already covered the song itself on this channel. I believe it's episode 3. And I went in depth into the making of the song Sweet Disposition and the tie into the movie 500 Days of Summer. And yes, granted, we will have to cover that a little bit today as well. You know, it's kind of like you can't ignore that while talking about this band, The Temper Trap. But what I also wanted to talk about is what not only led up to that song, but more specifically, what has the Temper Trap been doing today? You know, because this was like mid 2000s, maybe late 2000s more so, when they started to get bigger. So, you know, you're talking over 10 years ago, since that first album even came out. What have the Temper Trap been doing? You know, are they a one-hit wonder? Are they not? Are they indie? Are they not? So on and so forth. That is what we're going to talk about today. The band originally got its start when the lead singer, Dougie, and I believe one of the guitar players, even though it wasn't the main guitar player, met while Dougie was busking on the streets. They must have been in their, I'd say, mid to late teenage years, looking at the timeline, because they didn't make a band right away, but between the two of them, it was kind of decided like this is what we want to do with our lives. And so the two of them started, and gradually over the years, I'd say over the course of over 5 years, they started to kind of gradually gain more and more band members. And so they kind of got their sixth and final band member just a few years before they released their first album, which is now in about the mid to late 2000s. They released their debut album, which was self-titled, in about 2006 on a smaller record company, and they decided to just do local shows around Australia. And for many of you, you probably, especially in the indie scene, know the Temper Trap. You know how high and powerful Dougie's voice can get in that high falsetto. That and then the lead guitarist's usage of the guitar, put simply, kind of made the band stand out on their own. And Australia as a country was kind of hyping these guys up, you know, saying like, hey, these guys are the real deal. So Conditions was released in 2009, which is their first album. After the making of the album, they hadn't released it yet, what Temper Trap decided to do as a band was take a risk, and they decided to actually leave Australia and start to tour their album which hadn't been released yet, but it's kind of like a preview, all the way over in the UK. And they did that on purpose. You know, they kind of said like, hey, this is where indie ground, because you got to think of the times. You know, back then, Arctic Monkeys, you know, the kind of the new indie movement, Block Party, was happening over there in the UK. And they recognized that they wanted to be a part of that. So they took a risk. They went over and it paid off. They toured with the Silver Sun Pickups to promote their debut album. And then it was released in Australia and then eventually all over the world. It was no question that at the time, Sweet Disposition was carrying them as a band. You know, it's kind of hard to debate that. And then, of course, with it being featured at a key moment in the film 500 Days of Summer, it only started to boost their popularity. And at this point, they are traveling worldwide, pretty much just banking off that first album and off of the song Sweet Disposition alone. And so they, of course, had to follow it up, and they followed it up with a self-named The Temper Trap as their next album. Now, while their second album, The Temper Trap, did not really have a huge single coming off of it, definitely not getting the recognition as Sweet Disposition did. They, as a band, were really starting to gain momentum and, I think more importantly, make connections in the music industry. Because the next two bands that they opened up for was Coldplay on their My Lotto Xyloto tour and the Rolling Stones. So again, maybe not getting the recognition that they were looking for from fans, but definitely getting it from their fellow musical peers. However, around 2013 now, this is kind of when things went off the rails for the Temper Trap just a little bit because they lost their lead guitarist who decided to leave the band at that time. The only good news is both sides, both Lorenzo and the Temper Trap as a band, seemed to have no bad blood between them. He had nothing but good things to say about the band, and they had nothing but good things to say about him. It seemed like they kind of just reached an impasse and were just kind of done with the direction for both of them. So he decided to leave, and Temper Trap went right into work on their third album. And so at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, they started to work on their next album. But this actually, from the time period from their second album to their third album, it took them a little while. It took them 2 years to get around to releasing the third album, which was released in 2016, which is called Thick as Thieves. Now, this kind of leads us to the last part of the video and maybe the biggest question. Well, what happened to Temper Trap? Because with their lead guitarist leaving, with kind of a big break between the second and third album, it seemed like they kind of got in their own way. But really, breaking down the timeline, it kind of makes sense. Because what happened was after they released their third album, they did go on tour for it. But shortly after that, and kind of just taking their time and enjoying the tour, COVID happened in 2020. And the bandmates all lived in not only apart, but they lived in different countries around the world at the time. And so because of that, they decided to take a brief hiatus, kind of taking advantage of that time. But the good news for all of you fans of the Temper Trap is they supposedly have been working on new music. And ever since, I believe, 2022, they have been touring around with different bands like Imagine Dragons. So the Temper Trap definitely is still on the table for making new music. I had to quickly check just to make sure. They currently are on tour now in the United States. So that is the Temper Trap and what they've been up to. To kind of wrap up the video, I have a new feature here. What do you guys think of them, and how indie do you guys think these guys are? Here's my ruling right now. I kind of left them in the mainstream area, but one change is I might put them right in the edge of indie. A lot of people know Sweet Disposition as a song. They might not know the name of the song, but I definitely think if you played it for them, they would know it. But what do you guys think? Where are they on this chart? I'll see y'all next week.